Hey y'all, it's Crystal. Shall we talk about some of my favorite books of 2022? Yeah, let's do it. So I've got my top 15 favorite books of 2022 for you today. Now these are going to be non-horror. I'm going to do a separate list for horror because I read so much horror that I just kind of want to do a separate list. You know, that's fine. So these are going to be non-horror books that I really loved in 2022. And I did try to rank them, so I got 15. We're going to start at 15 and go to number 1. It was a little hard, but I did the best I could. So I ended up reading like 240 something things this year. And I had overall a pretty good year, so it was kind of hard to even narrow these down, but I did it. Okay. So let's just get going. Number 15, Still Life by Sarah Winman. I loved this book. I read this really early on in the year, but it kind of stuck with me. This is an historical fiction story. Takes place at the beginning. It's kind of during World War II, but the bulk of it is after World War II, following an ex-soldier and how his sort of life intertwines with an older woman who is an art patron and professor, and it was lovely. One of the most wonderful friend groups that I've read in a while, and it was just really wonderful. The bulk of the story takes place in Italy, and it was lovely. I cried a little bit. Yeah, it was really good. All right, number 14, Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. This one was just a ton of fun. It was a lot of fun, and this is it's a science fiction story and if you like stories that have to do with like cloning, you may like this one. There's a guy named Mickey who's as part of this crew to go to this new planet to try to see if it's feasible for human life, and his role is to kind of do dangerous things, and once he dies, they make another one of him. And so we are on Mickey 7 right now. But then something happens, and they think Mickey 7's dead, so they make a Mickey 8. But then Mickey 7 isn't dead, so Mickey 7 and Mickey 8, they're here trying to say, can we both be alive at the same time? It's really a lot of funny bits into it, and I just had a good time with it. Really, it was a fun one. All right, number 13, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. I love this book. It's a middle grade story. Features a lot of African American lore like John Henry, Brer Rabbit, Anansi. Oh my gosh, it's so good. We follow Tristan as he is staying with his grandparents for the summer because he lost his childhood friend died, and there's a book involved, and he is transported to this other world where all these characters live, and he gets kind of involved in things. It's so wonderful. Read this book. It's amazing, and the cover is stunning. I love it. Okay, number 12. I've talked about this one quite a bit, and it's really 3 books, but this is the Vicious Lost Boys series by Nikki St. Crowe. This is a dark retelling of Peter Pan, erotica type of story, kind of reverse harem situation. Peter Pan is pretty dark in this. He kidnaps the darling women as they come of age because he needs to find his shadow to regain his full magical power to be the ruler of Neverland. There's lost boys, there's pirates, there's fairies, Tinkerbell, the Croc. They're all there, but with a little bit of a dark spin, and I'm addicted to the series, and I loved it. Okay, next up, another middle grade story actually is The Last Quintista. This is by Barbra Higuera. This is wonderful. This is a science fiction story. We've got, the Earth is kind of on its last leg. There's a crew of humans that are going into space to try to look for somewhere else for us to be. And as folks are put kind of into stasis for the long journey, something actually not very good is happening, and their memories are erased. And so that when people are awakened, they don't remember life on Earth. And so the people that are kind of in charge are trying to establish, a new way of doing things. And it's not actually very cool. Now, our young protagonist, she's amazing. When she is being put into stasis, there's a little glitch. And so when she is woken up finally, she actually has all of her memories still. So she remembers life on Earth. She remembers her family, and she remembers her grandmother, who was a Quentista, a storyteller. And so she is trying to figure out what's going on now, and all this kind of stuff. It's a whole thing. It's wonderful. There's this conversation about, of course, what it is to be human, and learning from our past. Our history is important to remember, especially the aspect of storytelling of your culture. It was so good, you guys. You've got to read it. And again, another stunning cover. Okay, and then number 10, another middle grade. I've actually got 3 middle grade books on this list. The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Oh, this is so lovely. Gosh, I love this book. Okay, so this is more of a fantasy story. And we're kind of in this world in which there's a sort of, village type community. And sort of once a year, they sacrifice a baby to a witch in the woods. Now, the witch in the woods just is like, why does this village keep sacrificing babies? I'm not really sure why. But she takes them and then basically kind of rehomes them because there's a baby in the woods. And so our main girl in here is she's one of the babies that was sacrificed, and the witch accidentally gives her moonlight when she finds her instead of starlight like she usually does. So that gives her a little bit of magical abilities. So the witch has determined to raise her on her own. And there's this little dragon character who's amazing. And we basically learn, why does the village do this? What is the connection with this witch? What's going on here? The background of this girl. It's really, really wonderful. Of course, a kind of found family aspect. I love the magic in here. Oh, this was just really kind of heartwarming and lovely. I loved it. Okay, next up, number 9 is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I finally read this. I don't, sometimes it just takes you forever to read these, really important classics, but I finally read it and it was fantastic. Of course, you're dealing with trauma, of generational trauma from slavery, how that affects folks. There's also this aspect of a haunting as we follow our main character Setha, who has lost a child, but is this child haunting her? It's really wonderful. Yeah, just do a favor if you haven't, like me, if you've just been procrastinating on this one, you gotta read it. It's really, really good. It's a classic for a reason. Yeah. Okay. Next up, number 8. Seraphinas Lament by Sarah Chorn. This is a dark fantasy story that I really, really loved. We've got this in this world. This guy has basically kind of overthrown the monarchy, and he's like taking rule, but he's not very nice. Not a very nice guy. He keeps Seraphina, who is a magic user. He keeps her prisoner and does not treat her very well. She's become quite frail and really disabled by the abuse that she has received. The magic in this world is a lot of elemental magic, so like fire, water, earth, but there's also a magic where people can kind of like read minds and stuff. There's old gods, being, awakened from their slumber. It's, a lot of political maneuverings, rebellions. Oh, it's really good. Very dark, very dark. There's a lot of tough scenes in here, but this was fantastic. Sarah did a really great job with creating the world here. I really loved the characters and the ending. Whoo, doggies! I need book number 2 because I got to know what's going on in this one. This was fantastic. And thanks to Steve from Steve's Talk Books for sending this book my way so that I could read it because I loved it. Okay. Okay, number 7. Yep, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. Oh, how good was this? I devoured this book. I read it so fast because I was totally engaged in this story. We've got 2, older men who have, each of their respective sons were married and have been murdered recently. The cops don't seem to be making any headway, and so they're like, you know what? Let's see what we can do together. We're their ex-cons, so they're gonna have connections. They have their own way of finding out the truth about everything, and it's kind of a revenge story in that way, but also them trying to find a little bit of redemption because they weren't very accepting of their son's relationship. A lot of kind of old school kind of homophobic feelings about their sons and their relationship. So they're feeling some kind of way, that their sons are now gone and they are left with, the memories of how they treated their sons, So there's all of that in there. And oh my gosh, a lot of really good, really good violence, but a lot of good violent scenes in here. These guys, like I said, they're ex-cons, so they have their own way of doing things, and I just really like this. I love the characters of Ike and Buddy Lee, and I would just love to see this made into a movie. I think it would be a really great movie. Yeah, I loved it. Okay, number 6. Much like Beloved, I finally read The Color Purple by Alice Walker, and yeah, this was amazing. It's one of those stories where you kind of think you know the story because you've seen the movie, but let me tell you, you've got to read the book, even if you think you know the story or if you've seen the movie a bunch of times. Now the movie's fantastic, but this book is even better. We get so much more in the book, and particularly with the relationship between Celie and Shug. Oh my gosh, why was that not in the movie? What the hell? Because it was amazing. But this book is both like heartbreaking, it's sad in places, but there are these little tender moments of love and relationships, and the ending breaks you, and I'm sobbing just like I sob every time I watch that movie at the ending. It's so good. It was so good. Okay. What's next? Oh, number 5 is The Green Mile by Stephen King. Yeah, I know. It's another one of these, maybe you've seen the movie a bunch of times. But the book, wow, is so good. This book's amazing. And man, Stephen King can really just be hit or miss with me, as we know. Like, I've still not gotten over how much I have hated fairy tale. But this one lands on a top of the year. Who, you never know. So, of course we follow the story of a, penitentiary back in like the 1940s-ish, and the Green Mile is the inmates that are on death row, and then of course the guys that work there on the row, and we got a more present timeline as one of the guards is kind of telling the story about what happened during that time period. He's now, a much older man, and yeah, it's wonderful. Of course, John Coffey is just one of my favorite characters, I think. He's what's very bittersweet, with John Coffey, but it's just this was wonderful, and you do get a little more in the story, of course, than from the movie. And also, how much do we hate Percy Whitmore? He is an awful person. This was fantastic. I loved it. Okay, next up, number 4. I forgot my book downstairs. Okay, but anyway, Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon Jays. Oh gosh, I love this one. I've already read this one with Brad Proctor. We're going to be reading book 2 very soon. And gosh, I love this. This is another fantasy. This is a sort of African setting. So you get a lot of sort of desert type landscapes. Oh my gosh, what is this story about? It's hard to talk about. But ultimately we have this kind of group of folks that are on the hunt for a missing boy. And that's kind of the crux of the story. But of course there's a lot more going on. Our main character is this man named Tracker, and like his name suggests, he is a a tracker, and he's really good at tracking down people. He has a really strong sense of smell, as he can track people miles and miles and miles and miles away. So we pick him up. He's a child in the beginning. We learn about his family. We learn about his, how he left his family, how he gets hooked up with the Leopard in this character, or in this book, who is basically a shapeshifter. There's a bit of a queer love going on. There's a witch in here who's amazing. There's a giant. I love this. I love Tracker. He's kind of a character you love to hate, because he's not like a nice guy, and you don't actually know if anything he's telling you in this story is true. Like, you just don't really know, honestly. And I kind of love that about this story. The story's pretty dark in places. A lot of, definitely some violent scenes in here. But boy, did I love this. I love this book. And definitely looking forward to the rest of the series. Oh my gosh. Read this book. It's a bit hard to get into, I think, at first. Persevere. It is worth it. It is worth it. It's fantastic. Okay, number 3 is Oryx and Craig by Margaret Atwood. Boy, did I enjoy this book. Yeah, I like this one a whole heck of a lot. I read the whole series actually in 2022. I like the whole series as a whole. I think each book definitely kind of rounds out the greater story and fleshes out the world and everything. But there's something about this first one is a little bit higher than the other two. Oh, it's a post-apocalyptic kind of story. We are following a man named Snowman, who maybe he's the last man on Earth. I don't know. The world has fallen to hell. It's kind of like a virus story. Something that's killing off humanity. And we've got some timelines going on. So we jump back in time to when he sort of the before times, as we see what was going on at that time and how people were living. Very much a kind of have and have nots kind of setting. A lot of communities were set up in these kind of gated communities around where you worked and that kind of thing, determined kind of where you were able to live. Kind of outside those areas were pretty rough, or could be. Lot of scientific things going on with like genetic manipulations, which leads to the world falling into hell. And there's you find out who Oryx and Craig are, who the children of Craig are. It's kind of strange at times, but boy, I really loved this. I love this world that Margaret has created here. Super interesting, very interesting characters. Yeah. Dark at times. This was excellent. Yes. Okay, number 2, How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. Oh, let me tell you how much I love this book. This is a science fiction, almost kind of another kind of post-apocalyptic type of story. This is a virus story. So if you're not quite ready, for that kind of story, just pause it and come back to it at another time. But boy, yes, this book is so good. Essentially each chapter, well, let me start out. It starts off, we're dealing with some climate issues. The Arctic regions are melting, and in doing so, things are being uncovered. And in this case, it is a sort of preserved, kind of ancient human thing that is being uncovered. So we have this group of scientists who are there, of course, scientisting things, doing research and figuring out, what is it about this person, right? They take blood samples and all that thing. And when you know it, a dormant virus has now been released because of all the melting snow. And it just continues on to wipe out most of the population. Yay, that's fun for us. So basically each kind of chapter in this book is kind of a separate story, but they are linked, in a greater whole. I've seen some people say this is a short story collection, and I disagree. The stories are, each chapter is a separate type of story, but they are linked in a greater story. So they're interconnected in that way. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and each story really progresses us through the future. So we see, we start off how everything started, then you pick up a little bit later about how
people are dying off and everything, and then years and years, and how it progresses through really a lot of years, and how that affects humanity moving forward. Lots of ideas in here. I'm telling you, it's so I can't even talk about it because I'm like tongue-tied how amazing this book was. I'm telling you, you've got to read it. You just got to read it. It's just so good. By the ending of it, my mind was literally just kind of blown, and I want to reread it right now talking about it. That's how good this book is. Yeah, you got to read it. Number 1 is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Dame Octavia E. Butler, let me say. I love this book. Boy, this is another kind of dystopia type of story. I think I'm drawn to those kinds of stories. This one is excellent. We are in a world, there's a lot of economic kind of crisis going on, and some environmental issues. The government seems to not really be doing much about it though, so again, that yay for us, right? But communities are again kind of separating themselves into these small communities that are kind of walled away, and they kind of take care of patrolling them themselves. Really, like the world outside the walls is really violent, very dangerous. You don't want to be stuck outside. Food is kind of hard to come by. Yeah, people are struggling really. And so we're following our main character Lauren, who one kind of fateful night, her community is raided, and she loses her family and she loses her home, so she kind of strikes out into the world, even knowing the dangers, because really she doesn't have anywhere else to go or anything else to do. So she's a very smart woman, and she's a bit younger in the beginning of the story, kind of a teenager, but she has these really, these ideas, right? And she kind of forms her own religion in a way. And so as she's kind of out making her way, she's picking up people as she goes, and we're just kind of following her way through this new kind of, these new ideas that she has, but also this rough world that's out there. And are there people she can trust? Are they not? Whoa, this is so good. This is so good. I love Octavia Butler. Her ideas that she has are just like none other. Wonderfully written. Her characters are always amazingly complex. And this was fantastic. So that's my favorite book of the year. I need to read book 2. That's in the plans for 2023. So that's it. That's my favorites of 2023. Let me know. Have you read any of these, or do you want to read any of these now? Please, I hope so. So here's to 2023 and more amazing reads. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.